Hey friends, welcome back. Today we're going to be tier ranking the 104 books that I read in 2024. Our categories are as follows. Favorite books of the year, 5-star reads are in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. Under that is Brat. Books that were almost 5 stars, books that I really do love and I really do recommend, but they just didn't make it to that favorite spot. Middle and debatably my favorite meme of the year is I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. You know the one with the sort of like Lisa Frank style dolphins, and there's usually some like depressing quote over it. I feel like it fits for the middle of the road because it's like, I just want to be part of your symphony. Like you were good, but you weren't great, and you weren't bad, but you weren't good. So middle of the road, 3-star. Under that is Pepe the King Prawn. Ones that were just tiring for me, just much like how Pepe looks. Books that I didn't really love, books that I don't really think that I want to recommend, or just books that didn't really work for me. So probably like 1 or 2-star books in that category. So, and then I don't think I said what the bottom one was. It's just chill guy, you know, just a chill guy. I'm not rating these. You'll see why. So now that we're familiar, let's dive in. Let's dive in. All right, ready? We're ready to go. We're going. And we're gonna start with A Time of Courage by John Gwynne. And we'll find all of the other ones. So the first one is A Time of Dread. And all of these are gonna be, I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony, unfortunately. We got A Time of Dread, A Time of Courage, and then A Time of Blood is somewhere. Here it is. John Gwynne is one of my favorite writers. I think that he's phenomenal. I love the Faithful and the Fallen series by him. If you've been here, you already know that. This series is set 100 years after the Faithful and the Fallen series. I just didn't connect with these characters nearly as much as I did in The Faithful and the Fallen, and I think that if I don't love a character, if I don't feel very attached to them, it's hard for me to care about the plot a whole lot, which this plot also kind of just felt like a little bit of a rehashing of what happened in the previous series. So it was good, but I wanted it to be better, and I just want to be part of your symphony. You know what I'm saying? Next is Right by Sarah Rose Etter. That one is fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. Even though I wouldn't want 14 of these books, I wouldn't necessarily even want to reread it completely because this is a very sad, like dismal book, but for the writing alone, like fantastic. So good. It is one that you definitely should look up trigger warnings for. I have thought about this book like every couple days since I read it, and it belongs in the top spot for sure. Next we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I forgot I've read so many of these books. Things We Never Got Over. I'll do it. It's Brat. Honestly, I had a good time with this. It's like a small town, definitely romance. I really only have like little flashbacks of this plot. Like all I remember is that it surprised me. I had a good time, but I definitely didn't like love it. It was a strong 4-star, so it belongs in Brat. That's how I feel. Serpent in the Wings of Night, Brat. 100%. I had a great time with this. This is a romantasy. It has like a death competition where our main character is a human living in sort of like a vampire world since she was adopted by the vampire lord. And there are these games going on that the winner of the game, it's like battle to the death, right? The winner of the game gets a wish granted from the Queen of Death herself. And, you know, everything is stacked against our main character because how could she win against a bunch of vampires and so on and so forth. I had a good time. I think the world building could have been a little bit more fleshed out and better, but like I ate up the competition, loved the characters. I had a great time. There are 2 other books in this series because I finished the whole thing. Look at me go. 6 Scorched Roses. I'm gonna go with I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. And I think that I'll put the third one. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony as well. I think that six Scorched Roses could go up in Brat. I don't know. I'm going to keep it down here for now, just because I don't remember too much about Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, honestly. However, what I remember is vlogging it or talking about it in a video and saying that I feel like I said that I liked it even better than the first one. That has not continued to be true. I don't really know where that came from because like for longevity, like now today, I just think of the first book so fondly. I read that book in one day. I had a grand old time. 6 Scorched Roses, I remember I listened to purely on audio and I had a good time, but it's a little novella and sometimes it's a little bit harder for me to feel completely connected to a story that doesn't take me like many places, though I did love what it did. And same with Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I just don't really remember what happened in that book, so that must mean something, right? I still recommend this series. I had, again, a lot of fun. Done and Dusted, we're going to go, all of these are Brat. Done and Dusted, Swift and Saddled, and Lost and Lassoed, Brat. So good. Yeehaw cowboy romances, small town, all of them focus on obviously different couples and different romance tropes and dynamics. Phenomenal. I love Lila Sage. I think my favorite of the three is Swift and Saddled, and I could put it up in Fantastic, give me 14 of them right now, but I'm going to leave it in Brat because I felt like it was a little bit too short. I really did want it to be drawn out a little bit longer. I love a slow burn, and I feel like that's a good problem to have with a book. It's like, I loved it so much that I wanted more. You know, it's not a bad thing, but I'm going to keep them all in Brat. Next is Finlay Donovan is Killing It, and this is the first one going in Pepe the King Prawn because I skimmed the last like 30% of the book because I was bored to tears. I, for whatever reason, couldn't suspend my disbelief. I was just having trouble like caring about what was going on. It very much felt like something that I had either watched or read before, and because of that, it needed to do something in like a very interesting way, and it just wasn't doing that for me personally. I do see why people love it. It just wasn't for me. Next, ooh, damn. Okay, Jenn Lyons, The Ruin of Kings. Okay, I am going to put this up in Fantastic, give me 14 of them right now, because even though this book is a strong 4 right now, that's like a 4-star with an asterisk, because I know that if I reread this, it would be 5 stars. The writing is phenomenal. The storyline is so interesting. I love that book. But I was reading it during July when I was going on my Bali trip, and I was so preoccupied with that and making sure that I had everything ready. You know, it was my first trip abroad, so I was just a little bit, you know, scattered mentally. It was harder for me to focus on this book, even though I know it's phenomenal. I am really excited to revisit it in the future, so it does deserve to be up there because I do think it has so many great things going for it. Next, we have Remarkably Bright Creatures. I'm going to put it in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony because the first half of that book, I felt like it was a different book completely than the last 50%. The last 50%, I had a great time. It was so good. It finally felt like once we reached that middle point, the author really found what she was trying to say, the story that she was trying to tell. And I don't know if this is just me, but I really wasn't connected or interested in the first half. I was just sort of very middle of the road blah, but I loved how it ended. I loved how it all wrapped up. But for that reason of it feeling a little bit disconnected, like the two halves of the story didn't really talk to each other very well, I am just gonna leave it in the middle of the road because it did get a 3-star for me, which is what it is, I guess. Next we have Slewfoot. Honestly, Slewfoot is going in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. This one was a contender for at least my top like 25 maybe, I don't know. It's up there. It was a really, really good book. I loved the like folk horror. I loved the good for her aspects of this horror story. It was written beautifully. The overall plot was structured so well that anytime you even felt like there was a dip, like you knew that it was dipping for a reason because the overall eerie atmosphere behind what was happening at any point of the story, it was going to ramp it right back up. Like it was truly a beautiful story, and I think about the final scene all the time. I could see myself rereading that book. Next, we have Open Throat by Henry Hoke. I think this one could go in Fantastic or Brat, but I'm going to put it in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now because the overall method of storytelling in this was just so interesting and so unique. We're following a queer mountain lion, and I think that this is actually like based on like a real mountain lion, which is really cool. But we're following this queer mountain lion and like the commentary on many different social issues within, you know, our society. And I think that it's a really smart way to talk about these situations and these topics because a mountain lion doesn't have the higher level thinking to explain things like a human would, but in doing that, it makes the reader really try to think deeper on what Henry Hoke is like trying to say. So I think that it's phenomenal. It's short enough to where I would definitely reread it at least one other time. And I just think of it so fondly. Then we have This Ravenous Fate by Hayley Dennings. This is definitely Brat. I had a great time with this book. This is lesbian vampires in Harlem 1920s, and there's so much tension. There's bloodshed. It's very much like best friends turned enemies turned like lovers maybe, who knows? I love their chemistry. I love their connection. I'm very much looking forward to continuing and seeing where the story goes because Hayley Dennings is great. I love her. Next, we have House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. Listen, I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. Crescent City series, is so bittersweet for me because House of Earth and Blood, it's like one of my favorite books ever. Like I rarely reread books, especially books that are this long, and I have reread Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood at least twice because I love it. It's so good. Like I will die on the hill that is that book. But since then, I don't think that the story has captured my love and attention much like that first one did. This third one, the plot just doesn't feel very cohesive anymore, and I'm not sure how to talk about it without spoiling things. I think that this book suffered a lot from info dumping. It didn't feel like Crescent City anymore. Like, I just don't think that this series is going in the direction that I am enjoying, which is kind of upsetting, but yeah. Maggie Stiefvater, The Raven Boys. Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. I love this YA fantasy. There's like Latin talking trees. There's magical realism. There's boys in this like really prestigious school. Fun family, like oracle magic. And it has literally everything. Like if I read this earlier in my life, it would for sure be one of my favorite series of all time. And I'm not saying that it won't become one of my favorite series because I do think that that could happen. I love it. There's little random quotable lines that take me right back to being a teenager. Little emo Sid would have loved this book. Next, we have A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. I definitely forgot that I read this book this year. And I think I'm gonna put it in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. Because I do think of this fondly, like I did like it, but I don't think it hit me nearly as much as it hit a lot of other people. From what I heard, I was expecting to like sob by the end. And I did feel like a little bit sad. Like I definitely felt for our main character. I liked the story a lot, but I think that's where it ends. Like I just don't remember feeling as strongly about this Frederick Bachman than I have of other ones that I've read. So I'm gonna leave it here because it was good, but it wasn't like great for me. Then we have The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. I'm also gonna put this in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. This scenario is like a writing retreat for writers, and the winner gets some like huge publishing deal from the woman who is running it, who is herself like a very famous author. And this thriller requires so much suspension of disbelief, which, you know, isn't always a problem. I think that I was having a great time for like maybe 40 or 50%, and then it went completely off the rails. Like suspension of disbelief like couldn't be suspended enough. I do think that it was still fun, and I think that if thrillers do go this wild, there has to be some sort of redeeming like wrap up, or I don't know, some sort of cohesiveness at the end. And this one did sort of have that. Unlike a couple other ones that we will get to, I'm trying to see where they are because I could just do them really quick. Like let's do You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose, as well as The Perfect Marriage. Okay, listen, if you watched my worst books of 2024, you know kind of where this might be going. Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose was my least favorite book of the entire year. So I'm gonna put that like in the front if I can. I don't think I can. Maybe I can. There we go. I don't think that was a good book. I hate almost every single thing about it. You Shouldn't Have Come Here, just like The Writing Retreat, very much suspension of disbelief, very, very wild, like goes off the rails completely. The final plot twist in You Shouldn't Have Come Here, like the final scene, I hate to say it, I love it. I do actually really like the ending of that book, but the whole book up until that, like absolutely crazy. My suspension of disbelief could not be suspended enough, just like Writing Retreat. But the thing about Geneva Rose's books that was in both of these books that I just couldn't get behind was the weird like B or C plot of romance that was taking place. It just didn't make sense. I hated it. And for those reasons, they are where they are. Okay, next we have Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is Brat. I think that Mary is a phenomenal book. I think that Nat Cassidy did a great job writing this story. If you do read this, it is pretty essential to read it like cover to cover. Read his pre-author note and his post-author note. After reading the post-author note, I really appreciated the story even more. The reason it's not in the top spot is because it is too long. I do think that there are things that could have been omitted or edited down at the very least, but for the most part, I really, really loved this horror book. It gives victims of like horrific murders sort of a voice and makes them sort of have a place and a name again. And I just love what he was doing with this horror book. So I think of it very fondly. Next we have Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors, and this is fantastic. Give me 14 of them them right now. Coco Mellors writes very complicated, raw, and like difficult characters. Most of the time, they don't have many redeeming qualities, or they aren't acting in a redeemable way, but it's also because they're going through so much and they are so like deeply troubled. We're following these three sisters after they lose their fourth sister, and it's multi-point of view, so we're following all three of them, and they all are handling this situation in very different ways, and most of it is unhealthy, but it's so good. Coco Mellors is definitely an auto-buy author for me. I love Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I love Blue Sisters just as much. Next we have Right Man, Right Time by Megan Quinn. This is going, I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony, because I did eat it up. It was my first sports romance. This is a hockey romance. It also has age gap, and this age gap, I know that, you know, people will defend what they're into completely, and that's so valid. I just personally didn't like the age gap, and I just felt a little bit weird about it sometimes, because he's like an older guy. I don't remember how old he is right now, but she's, I think, in like college age. Like, she still has a backpack on, and she definitely is written older. Like, I remember forgetting that she's college aged until Megan Quinn would say something like she put her school bag over her arm or something. It's like, oh right, she's young, and it would take me out of the story again. So the thing is I had a good time with it when I wasn't focusing on what I wasn't liking. But fundamentally, I will put it in the 3-star category. The Magical Age of Overthinking by Amanda Montell. It's going in, well, see, here's the thing. I want to put it in chill guy not rating, but it's not. No, just kidding. It is going in Pepe the King Prawn because I did finish it. I'm saving the bottom category for ones that I either DNF'd or is like nonfiction or a poetry collection, you know? But no, I did finish Magical Age of Overthinking, or Age of Magical Overthinking, whatever. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but very simply, I have no idea what the book is even about. After every like chapter of a concept that Amanda Montell was trying to express, I couldn't tell you what it was about, because the way that she went about exploring her ideas or concepts were very meandery and just felt like very disjointed. I kept losing the train of thought. I love her other book, Cultish. I thought was researched and done and written really well. This one did not work for me, unfortunately. Then we have Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I stinking love him. I love him so much. I think he writes horror just for me. That's how I feel, because he is phenomenal at the slow, very slow burn, eerie type of horror that it just works. This is about a guy who is nicknamed the Thin Kid, and he and his group of friends, like, they were guerrilla filmmakers and they were making this movie called Horror Movie. And he now today, in today's timeline, is the only surviving cast member. There are a couple people who want to remake Horror Movie because it's become like a little cult classic, even though like 80% of the movie got deleted, like never saw the light of day. So now these new producers and the Thin Kid are trying to remake Horror Movie, and we're following both timelines, and I love the cursed film genre so much. So this just worked for me like from the get-go, but it just, the way that Paul Tremblay writes his horror is just perfect. It's perfect, and it's fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. Okay, here's what I was talking about. Frederick Bachman, Beartown, 100%. Like 6-star read in my top 10, just like Horror Movie. But Beartown ruined me. I sobbed for well over 20 minutes at the end of this book. At times it is a little bit difficult to read. No book has felt so like unbearably heavy, but also so light at the same time. This is the most like worth it book I think I've ever read, because even though like it like hurt me, I love it. It is in my favorite books forever. Absolutely. Then we have The Spirit Cuts Through Water. This is also going to be in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now, because the method of storytelling in this one, very similar to Open Throat, not like directly, but just how different this story is told in The Spirit Cuts Through Water is so interesting and so engaging, especially if you have the audiobook and you do a tandem read, like you listen while you physically read it. I think that is a phenomenal way to experience the story. There is multiple point of view switches. There are multiple like point of views in how the story is being told, like from different times and from different people. I think it's like a masterful book. I think it's done so beautifully. I would reread it. It's a standalone fantasy, which is really fun and hard to come by sometimes nowadays. I definitely recommend it. Then we have The Wedding People by Alison Espach, or I think it's Alison Espak. This one is going to go in Brat, I think. This one you also have to have sort of like suspension of disbelief. It's sort of satirical and like tongue-in-cheek with some of the things that go on. Our main character checks into this hotel with the full intention of committing suicide that night, but she finds out that there is a wedding party that is rented out the entire hotel for that whole weekend, and she ends up getting intertwined with the bride, and they become friends, they confide in each other. And I say that, but it also is very messy, obviously, because because of the reason that she was there to begin with. I think it has a lot of great discussions. I think that the characters are all very different from one another, very like dynamic. But there was something about it that just didn't scream 5-star, even though I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it and I do recommend it. But I think how the main character handled some situations throughout the story just felt a little bit like different from what I was perceiving her character structure to be. So there was something off, and I just don't think that it's not a 5-star for me, but I still did like it. Then we have Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I listened to this book on audio in one day. It has a podcast element to it, and the audio does change and it makes it very dynamic for an audiobook. I remember really having a good time, but this is one that like I don't really recall that much. There are a couple of these that I don't really recall, and I don't know what to do with it. Like I'll put it in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony, because yeah, I mean, I remember enjoying it. I remember having a good time with the audiobook experience, but unlike other books, this one just didn't stick in my brain for whatever reason. It is one that I still would recommend. If you love a thriller and you love an audiobook, 100% listen to this one. I just don't really remember enough of it to make it higher. Next, we have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is going in Pepe the King Prawn. It didn't work for me. I think the concept around the story is very cool, but was very slow, and also from the beginning, expectations were managed because it looks like vampires to me, but I knew it wasn't vampires before I started reading it. However, by the end of the book, I still don't really know what a familiar is or what is going on in the story. I know that I was bored reading the book, and I feel like it was confusing and not well explained in the like magic system or anything going on, I guess. It was just confusing and not fast-paced or interesting enough to make me try harder. Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austin. Ooh, that's right up there with ripe for me, honestly. I'm gonna put this in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now, because for this list, I don't have to like edit myself to a top 10 of the year like I already did in my best books of the year, which I'll link all of these videos I'm referencing down below. But Interesting Facts About Space was a contender for my top 10. It was in the long list for my favorite books of the year. I think that this one explores mental health in a really interesting way. I love the mother-daughter relationship, and it just has such a memorable main character. It made me love Emily Austin's writing so much. I have all of her books on my wish list now. I want to own them all. I love her cover style. I love so much about the story and the writing and the author, and I just loved it. Emily Henry, Funny Story, obviously is going to go fantastic. Give me 14 of them right. I will read any Emily Henry, and like 9 times out of 10, they are an absolute hit for me. Funny Story more than others, honestly. It's in my top 3 now of all of her books, being Beach Read, Book Lovers, and Funny Story. I don't know if Funny Story or Book Lovers is before the other, but Beach Read for sure. I'm always a Beach Read girly, but Funny Story's up there. I loved these two main characters. I loved their dynamic. I loved them separately and the journeys they were going on healing, and the way that they came together and were just good for one another. I love how the story was explored and written. Man, Court of Wonders by Rin Chipeko. Unfortunately, it's gonna be I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. The first book in this series is Silver Under Nightfall, which was, I think, 5 stars. I loved it. I loved it so much. This was the second book, so the final book in the duology, and it really did sort of just let me down. I didn't feel the chemistry like I did in the first book. I felt like the trajectory of the plot, it's not that it wasn't as exciting, but it definitely was. It was, first of all, a shorter book, but because of that, it felt like we weren't able to like stew in the problems of the plot and how we were figuring them out, and like the battle scenes. It just felt a little bit rushed, in my opinion, which sucked because I loved this little throuple that we're following so much in the first book. Like, I would have died for them. And then it just didn't live up to how I felt in the second book, unfortunately. So Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. I'm gonna put it in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now, because this book is first in a series, and I, just like many others on this list, I am so excited to continue, because in this first book, we are like just scratching the surface at like the like very deep intricacies of these two races of people that we're following. There's like normal humans, and then there's the Frey, which are seemingly immortal beings, and one of them falls to our main character's sword, sort of proving that they aren't immortal and they can be killed. So our main character is deemed the god killer. There's a prophecy within this book. There's a squirrel right outside my window. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Look at his little snowy head. Oh boy, he's cute. I think he's living in our attic. Not cute. But yeah, Age of Myth, excited to continue. Love the book. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. Okay, next we have how I started my year of 2024 off was reading Tower of Dawn, where is it? Empire of Storms and Kingdom of Ash. Okay, wait, listen. I think I'm gonna catch a lot of slack for this one. I don't think people are gonna love this. I'm gonna put Kingdom of Ash in Brat because I liked it. This whole series I liked. But I am going to put, I don't know if I can do that. Let me back up. Kingdom of Ash is going in Brat because the final scene, like the final last bit of the book, phenomenal. Loved it. Very much fantastic. Give me 14 of them, right? All of it leading up, I still was having a good time. Like it still went by pretty quickly, but for whatever reason, I wasn't like frothing at the mouth like a lot of people say they are about Kingdom of Ash. The vast majority of the book was great. Again, had a good time. But I want to say my favorite part of the whole series of The Throne of Glass, other than Crown of Midnight, I'm definitely a Crown of Midnight girly through and through. But other than that second book, I had the most fun doing the tandem read of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. So I think that the whole series for me is a Brat series, but Crown of Midnight would be fantastic. Give me 14 of them. Oh, guys, I think that you guys are going to be upset. I'm putting Tower of Dawn up in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. I think I should put Empire of Storms because it's a tandem. I read them together, so I'm gonna put that tandem read up at the top. I loved it. I had so much fun. Maybe it was the interactive back and forth between the two books, but I also loved the quickness of Empire of Storms and the slowness of Tower of Dawn. I think it was a great balance, and I think that the contrasting stories worked so well for me. Whatever. I loved it. Next, we have The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is Pepe the King Prawn. For specific reasons. This book was way too long and way too confusing for too much of the story. Like, I am all about like a long fantasy that has all of these intricacies that Mark Lawrence was writing. Like, the book itself is beautiful. What he was doing is stunning. And like, I do think of this book fondly. Like, maybe it should be I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. Okay, I'll put it there because overall, I do think that it's a great book. But the way that Mark Lawrence wrote the story didn't really work for me and how I like consuming stories. I know that in fantasy books, like, you might be confused for a little bit before like things click and things make sense, but you gotta leave me breadcrumbs in order to keep me wanting to continue and figure it out later. It felt like this book was so confusing up until like 80%, and that is far too much of the book for me to be just frustrated. My reading experience was not great. By the end, I appreciate it a lot because yes, things did start to make sense. I liked the things that he was telling and like building within my mind, but it was painful. So I'm gonna put it in the middle, and it is what it is. The Starless Sea, it was a reread this year. The only reread of the entire year, I believe. And it's always gonna be in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. It is just as beautiful and fantastic as it always has been. Like, it reconfirmed my love for this book. And it also reconfirmed that I could read it 14 times and still find something new every single time. It is a beautifully confusing puzzle of a book. Stunning. 10 out of 10 every time. Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I don't remember nearly anything about this. And for that reason, I'm just gonna put it in Pepe the King Prawn. I don't know. I remember not feeling anything special towards it. I don't think it was a 2 or it wasn't a 1 or a 2. I think I gave it a 3 stars, but I couldn't tell you why. I think it was just like, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. But now I'm gonna put it down there. I'm gonna put it down there. Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hiller. Same exact thing. Similar to Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, but this one was like a little bit less exciting. It's a thriller that I, again, listened to on audio, I think in like 1 or 2 days. Was interesting, but it didn't do anything special for me. Very much a like finish it and never think about it again sort of story for me. I don't know. I'm not mad that I read it, but it was sort of just nothing special for me. Middle of the Night by Rylee Sager. I Want to Be Part of Your Symphony because I had fun. I had fun with this book. Like, another thriller. I love listening to thrillers on audio while I'm like doing chores or something. So I listened to this book almost in its entirety while like painting the hallway and the stairwell downstairs. The story and the structure I thought was very fun. I was engaged the entire time. It is not higher than this because even though the ending makes sense and I get it, it's fine. That's all it is fine. Like, I was much more interested on what I thought the ending was going to be. I was much more excited about that. But this one is very similar to Home Before Dark, and I have a similar problem with this one, even though, you know, the way that I want to talk about both of these books I just will spoil everything, and I won't do that, but I feel similarly about Middle of the Night as I do with Home Before Dark. And if you've read both, then you might know what I'm saying when I say that the ending just took a turn that was more like, yeah, I get it, fine. Like, it makes sense, you know? I want it to not make sense. I want it to be wild, I want it to be crazy, and it obviously isn't, and that's fine. I just am sad about it, that's all. Graveyard Shift by ML Rio, going up in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. This one surprised me. Well, first of all, this book is only like 108 pages or something crazy. And the first 50 pages of the book, I was like, man, this really isn't doing what I thought it would do. And then the last half of the book, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Sort of like a cliffhanger ending, left me sitting after I closed the book thinking like, oh my God, it could go this way, it could go that way. And the repercussions of either of those trajectories that it could take now that the book is over is just so fun to theorize, and like, I love that. I love that in a book. ML Rio's phenomenal. I'll read anything that they write. Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola, phenomenal. It's very brat. Their chemistry and their banter, some of my favorite that I've read all year, honestly. No, you know what? I'm gonna put it up in fantastic because yes, period. It was one of my favorite romantic couples that I read all year. Yeah, I feel good about that because it didn't get a 5-star for me. It got 4.5 just because I think that it didn't get that 5-star feeling when I finished it. But for what the book is and what it contains and the discussions that we have surrounding these two main characters and what they're separately struggling with, I loved it. I really, really did love their relationship and their growth together and separately. So yeah, I'm gonna put it up at the top. I loved it. The Foxwife by Yang-Si Chu. This one is gonna go in Brat because this is a fantasy book. It plays with folklore and we're following, is he like an investigator, like a detective, trying to figure out who this dead woman was that showed up on someone's doorstep. And he's very much into the idea or this folklore within like the Foxwife, the Fox people. I don't really know how to call it. I don't remember. But our other point of view is one of these Fox people. And it is beautiful. I do remember loving how Yang-Si Chu wrote very specific scenes surrounding the more like magical parts of the story. Absolutely stunning. However, the plot throughout the entire book did sort of dip into like being a little bit bored every now and then. So I think that the pacing could have been a little bit better or more interesting, but it is definitely Brat because I still think of it fondly. I think it did a lot of things really well. Okay, now we have He, She, They by Skylar Baylor. I'm gonna put this in not rating because I don't think that I was exactly the intended audience for this book, even though it was really insightful and I did learn from it. It felt like it is definitely directed towards parents who have transgender children or they're looking for more education on like the topic. And again, like some of it just really wasn't for me, I guess. But that doesn't mean that it's still not good. I think that they did a really great job with this book, but I don't need to rate it. Now we have Bloom by Delia S. Dawson. Guys, this was in my top 10. This is fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. I will never shut up about this book. I'm begging Caleb to read it. I think that he would love it too. It is such a sweet and like beautiful start to a story, and then by the end it is literally 180. It is gory and troubling, and oh, every time I think of this I just like inwardly cringe and like get so excited because it is like masterful. It's so good. If you like horror books, like read Bloom, please, I beg of you. Then we have Richard Osman, The Man Who Died Twice. I'm gonna put it in Brat. I love Richard Osman. I think that his writing is phenomenal, and this little group of older people that we're following in this retirement village, they're so cute, and this book is the second in the Thursday Murder Club series. It's even more dynamic than the first book, like somehow, you know? The mystery itself is just a little bit more intricate, and we were having a little bit more puzzle pieces that we have to fit. So it was a little bit more exciting, and I had a great time with it. They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hani Fedorikib. This is another one. Caleb and I actually like sort of buddy read it, or we both at least read it around the same time. I'm gonna put it in Brat because I think that Hani Fedorikib, what he is doing, his voice in his essays and just the audiobook experience that I had because he is narrating it is phenomenal. It's really comparing and contrasting like music, culture, and social issues, and he's talking about all of these things within each essay, and also his personal experiences growing up, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. Like, I definitely, like, if you are someone that loves music and wants to read more nonfiction, like definitely give this one a listen. Absolutely phenomenal. I just personally didn't listen to all of the artists, so some of the comparisons or callbacks like went over my head. But during the essays that I did know the music artist, like Chance the Rapper, those little Easter eggs within like his essay, phenomenal, amazing. I just wish that I had that experience for all of the artists. And that's just a personal thing. Next we have Crying in H Bar by Michelle Zauner. Absolutely fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. My favorite nonfiction, my favorite memoir that I read all year. She's the singer in Japanese Breakfast, which has become a favorite music group for me and Caleb. That vinyl is on repeat in our house currently. And I think that this memoir was just structured beautifully. All of the discussions that were brought up were always closed and brought up again later and circled back to. Everything was just written beautifully, simply put. Obviously not an easy read, but really stunning. Next we have The One by John Mars. I'm gonna put it in I Want to Be Part of Your Symphony because this was another thriller that I read on audio, mostly in a day, and I had a good time. The book itself is very, very short chapters. Like it's very, very fast paced. It definitely keeps you entertained, but we're following multiple point of views in this world where there's a genetic test that can tell you your perfect match, and it has no regard for where your perfect match is, whether that person is on the other side of the world or whether they're already married. So this genetic test like ends up ruining a lot of people's lives, so on and so forth. We're following a lot of those different situations. It is interesting. However, I was much more interested in a couple of the plot lines than others. So whenever we would go to the ones that I wasn't super intrigued with, I would just sort of be a little bit bored and waiting to get to the next person. Some pretty good discussions within like different society and class structures. But at the end of the day, it was good, you know, one of those, like it was good. The Neighbor Favor by Christina Forrest is Brat. The book itself, the plot, I remember feeling a little bit let down of by the end of the book. Like I wanted more from them in their chemistry and banter. There was just, some of it was lacking, didn't feel completely organic every single time. However, I do love the concept of this book so much. Our male main character is an author, but like undercover. I'm pretty sure he writes under a pen name. And our other main character, she finds his books like forever ago and has read them and is obsessed with them. And she randomly decides to email him, just like a cold email that she found on his old website, telling him that like, hey, I love your books so much. Like they really changed my life. And he responds and they become sort of like pen pals. Lo and behold, he ends up moving in next to her by crazy just happenstance in the same apartment complex, and they become real friends. And he knows that it's her, but she doesn't know that it's him. So it's, you know, a little bit crazy. It does get a little bit messy, and it was really great. I, again, loved the concept more than the execution, but I still think of it so fondly. Next we have Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. I am just gonna be a chill guy about it. I'm not gonna rate it, but I do think that it's phenomenal. I think that it is a great nonfiction. I'm trying to get Caleb to read this one as well, just because I think that it's good for anyone. I don't think that there is anything necessarily in this book that is new information or like groundbreaking research being done, but the way that Ali Abdaal is explaining the information and bringing it to the table is really, really beneficial, because even if you do know the advice that he's giving you about just like doing things that matter to you and doing things in a way that feel good, even if you know what he's saying or you have heard before, they're all things that are really good to be reminded of, and it's told in a very refreshing way. So I love Feel Good Productivity. I could see myself re-listening to it in the future. I would give it a 4, but I'm gonna leave it down in the bottom. Real Americans by Rachel Khong, I'm gonna put in Brat because I love the book. I think that Rachel Khong is a wonderful writer. I was intrigued the entire time. It's a story where we get 3 different point of views. We're first following a woman falling in love with a man. She is from the like lower class society and he is definitely upper class, like very wealthy, and they fall in love. They end up having a kid. The next point of view you get is actually their kid, but there's a time jump and the dad is no longer in the picture. They're divorced. I don't know if they ever got married, whatever, but they're not together. So there's that problem that we figure out later on what happened within our third point of view, which is someone else entirely. I'm not going to say who, just in case it's a spoiler. I'm not sure, but it is a very engaging read. I love drama, love family drama. I love a multi-generational story. So this one had all of my like buzzwords, you know. I do think that it's in Brat instead of Fantastic because the plot sometimes was a little bit slow. My interest waned just a little bit. However, it was still a really, really strong 4-star read, and I think of it fondly. I like it a lot. Then we have House Across the Lake by Rylee Sager. I don't know if I should put this in Brat or I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. I'll put it in Brat. People hate this book, and I think that if you liked Home Before Dark, you wouldn't like House Across the Lake, and vice versa. And if you've read both of them, you would probably know why, because the endings are very different. I prefer an ending like House Across the Lake. I know it's a wild story, like completely, yeah. But like I was there. I was with it the whole time. I think it was just a strong 4-star read because there are still things that like was hard for me to suspend my disbelief entirely. However, I do love how wild it got. I was there for it. House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I just want to be part of your symphony. I understand that the way that T. Kingfisher writes horror is very accessible to a lot of people who don't really love the more like gory, intense horror. I think that I am just the girly that loves books like Bloom by Delia S. Dawson. I want it to go there. I want it to get like really dark and sort of gritty. And House with Good Bones, I really love it for what it is, but it is sort of like PG cozy horror, which is great. I still had a good time with it. I think that it's beautiful, and it had a lot of really good, like, what's the word? I don't know, descriptions. Like I was really able to picture what was going on within the story, which is crazy because it definitely is more like fantastical and things like that. So I think that it's a great book. It is just not the exact type of horror that I love, that I like froth over, you know? So it could go in Brat, but I'm gonna leave it in the 3-star because I did give it 3 stars. Next we have Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is going in Brat. I had a great time. It's very rare that a fantasy book with like humorous writing will get more than a 3-star for me. But it worked. It worked with this story because we're following multiple different characters. Well, we're following one point of view, but we're having many different attitudes and types of people within this group of guys. They used to be mercenaries and now they're just like older and their bodies are just much slower than they used to be, but they're being called back for one last mission. So that's what we're following. All of these guys have very different like attitudes and ailments, and they all complement each other so well. So even though like humorous writing doesn't always work for me, there was a good balance of like the jokes and the seriousness within this story. It really did work. It was a pleasant surprise for this year because there was another book, The Black Tongue Thief, that is I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony, because this was a fantasy book that also had a little bit more of like humorous writing, and on paper I should have loved this book. I think it has a lot of elements that I really do enjoy, like a found family, there's goblins, there's a witch, there's, I don't know, a lot of exciting things going on. A journey, I love a journey. But Christopher Buman, it felt like there wasn't a lot of dialogue within the story, and also for whatever reason it wasn't exciting, and the writing also had much more like humor within it. So I think Kings of the Wild had a good balance between seriousness and humor, and The Black Tongue Thief, pretty much for how I received the book and the storytelling, it just felt like it was mostly just humorous and kind of jokey, which is just not my taste. So I'm putting Black Tongue Thief in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony because like I still like the idea of the story. I just didn't like how it was told personally. Then we have The Night Swim by Megan Golden. This is going in fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. My favorite thriller that I read all year for sure. We're following sort of 2 different situations within the same story. Another like podcaster that is covering a case. It's a rape trial in this small town. And as she's there, she gets a note put on her windshield asking for her help in finding out what happened to this girl's sister when they were young. And it's kind of crazy because the podcaster like is very cognizant of not showing her face. Like she's not supposed to be known, but this person knows her. And it's interesting. It's following both of those situations, both of those different cases. And it's intense. It's one that made me so angry reading during the trial proceedings of the rape trial. And the way that Megan Golden wrote is just, it was a phenomenal book. Then we have Margot's Got Money Troubles. I think it could go in Brat, but I'm going to put it in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now because this book was so good. It was so quotable. I had it on Kindle and I kind of want to get a physical copy so that I can annotate it myself. But I remember working out while listening to this book, and I had my Kindle like in our gym, and I would pause the book and go back over to the Kindle and highlight to make sure that I could remember what the passage was, because I think that Ruthie Thorpe's writing is phenomenal. I love the way that she would change, I think she did first person to third person or something like that. Whenever Margot was talking about like her past, she would go into third person person and like sort of disassociate from it, because I think it was very difficult for her to narrate and talk about. And I think that writing style is just so interesting, and it was done so well. I love that book. I love it a lot. Same with Immortal Longings. This was a pleasant surprise. It was in my like honorable mentions of the year as well, because I think that I wasn't expecting much from it. I have read A Chloe Gong before. These Violent Delights is what I read before, and I didn't really love it. And so I was worried going into Immortal Longings because I wasn't sure if it was just the story or if it was the writing that I didn't mesh with. And it definitely was just the story, because I love Immortal Longings. This is a sort of like Hunger Games sort of dystopian style story where there's a battle to the death every single year with a grand prize. And the magic in the world is that the players will be able to body jump in between different bodies to try to win the games. And it's just interesting. I am very excited to read the second book, though I'm scared of it, just like I was scared of this one, because I don't know where it's gonna go. But I had a great time with Immortal Longings. And then we have Sundial by Catriona Ward, which sucks because every single thing that I read by Catriona Ward, like I have loved, but not this one. I'm gonna put it in Pepe, honestly, just because I really don't even like thinking about this book. And it's just because of the content matter. I do think that it was still written well. I think that she's a phenomenal author, but it just has some things with dogs that I don't love thinking about and I don't love reading. So maybe just looking to trigger warnings before reading that book. I wish that I did, because I probably wouldn't have read it at all. Nothing's very like on page or gory. It's just the concept. The concept behind what was going on is I just didn't like it. It really troubled me. It still does, clearly. Next we have Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I honestly have not stopped thinking about this book, and I'm gonna put it in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now because it is so short. They're little sci-fi novella, and I think it's a trilogy. It's following our main character who is, I think, leaving her planet to go study at this like university or something of the like to like better her life basically. And she, from what I remember, I could be a little bit off, but I remember that like no one really leaves the place that she's in. So she sort of like sneaks out, but things happen on the ship that she boards, and it gets a little bit wild. And this is one that I cannot wait to reread and then binge the rest of the books. I think it was written really beautifully. I think that the story was super exciting and the idea behind it just was really great. A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I just want to be part of your symphony. I think it's like it could go between Brat and Symphony, but I'm gonna leave it there because I think that it's a really good book. I think Ava Reed is a stunning writer, especially during the small little like maybe paragraph glimpses of maybe the darker side of her writing or the more lyrical side of her writing. I wanted more of that because those little glimpses made me think that the rest of the storytelling or the rest of the book fell a little bit flat. So that being said, like there were just parts of the book and storytelling that I wanted it to be drawn out. I wanted it to match the more like lyrical and beautiful parts of other parts of the writing. However, I do still think of this book fondly. So this one is sort of like higher up in this category than others in this category, but I'm still gonna leave it here, if that makes sense. And then this is my favorite book of the year. Welcome to the Hunam Dong Bookshop. Phenomenal. 6-star read. I put this in my #1 spot for 2024. It's following our main character who realizes that she's very unhappy in her job and she decides to quit and starts to open a bookshop. It's a very like slow slice of life story following her as she's doing this, as she's figuring out how to get more traffic to the bookstore, making book clubs within the store, and creating this community that people can go to this bookstore just to hang out and just to be and just to slow down and have conversation and community. And it is just absolutely stunning. My favorite little fact about it is that it's shelved in Korea as healing fiction, which after I read the book and I found that out, it was like a very big heart feeling. Like I just loved it even harder because that is exactly how I felt. I felt like healed. I felt light. I felt like that's how I always want to feel in my life every single day after reading this book. So like conceptually, it was definitely my favorite of the year. It is something that I want to take forward in my life moving forward. And it was just phenomenal. It's a very like slow and like healing book for sure. Wow, I read Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches this year, apparently. Are we sure? That's crazy. I'll take it for what it is, and I guess, yeah. I'm gonna trust these uploaded photos and say that I did read it this year. That seems so long ago. Whatever. I'm gonna put it in Brat because I love this little found family. I loved our main character. She is a witch, part of this very secret society of irregular witches. Like this is in a world that people are not supposed to know that witches actually exist. And our main character has a little Instagram profile where she like does magic, but she makes it seem like she could be just doing edits post filming, you know? But but someone sees her and like knows that she's a real witch, and he contacts her to try to get her to come to this little house in the middle of nowhere and try to teach 3 little girls who are witches, try to teach them how to control their magic and how to, you know, grow up as a witch. And it's really wholesome. It is a romance. There's a grumpy sunshine. There's a lot of talk about belonging, and I thought it was really beautiful. Wow, 104 books is a lot to talk about. Do you hear my throat? Next we have One Star Romance by Laura Hankin. This was one of my favorite romances too that I read in this year. I don't really know if I should put it in Fantastic or Brat. Honestly, okay, this is another book that I read in July, like surrounding leaving for my Bali trip. So it was exactly what I needed, like something light, quick, and just fun. But I also don't think that I was all there when I was reading in that month, because this is, I think I'll just put it in Fantastic. Why not? What the hell? Our main character is an author, and she just published her first book, and she's walking down the aisle as a bridesmaid in her friend's wedding. The guy that is walking her down the aisle, she finds out the night before that he gave her book a 1-star review, and he doesn't know that she knows, but she knows, and she is obviously very upset by it because like they now know each other, and it was very uncalled for. It seemed very random. And we're following that situation, figuring out like what is going on, like why would that happen, and their messy friendship and relationship because they keep getting thrown into situations together because of their friend group. And I just thought it was really fun. I honestly, I just loved it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it in Fantastic because why the hell not? The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore is Brat. Went into it not knowing very much about it. I didn't know it was spicy. This is a spicy little small town romance. Our main character is taking over this Pumpkin Spice Cafe from her aunt. She moves to this little sleepy small town, and she is just having issues with her shop. Things are going wrong, things need fixed, and there's this guy who has his own issues that is showing up and helping her. And I do love the atmosphere. I think this book's best part was how it made me feel in very specific scenes. Like there's a little fall festival that was written, and I felt like I was there. Like I could literally smell everything that was going on within the story. I could see it, I could feel it. But the thing that should have been the focal point, the relationship between the 2 main characters, I think there is a lot of room for growth in this writing in that aspect, because the problem that was brought up at the very start of the story continued to be the same problem the whole entire book. So it just felt a little bit repetitive, and like the main characters were just like rehashing the same thing, not really growing until the very end, but it just felt sort of boring and repetitive. But for the most part, I went in for a good time, and I did have a good time. It was a good audiobook. Next we have The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is for sure fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. I cannot wait to continue this series. This was for sure a 5-star read. It is a beautiful, masterful book, honestly. Makes me definitely want to look into his previous works, which I do have the first book in his other series, which I think is completed. This one is a first book in a series that is not completed. So to scratch that itch, maybe I will go to his backlist, because man, this story, this plot, these characters, every single thing is thought out to a T. So beautiful, so complex by the end. Like I am scared to continue, because by the end of the book, I was sort of reeling. Couldn't even handle what plot twists were going on. Then we have Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wong. I'm gonna put it in Fantastic as well. This is a dark academia. Emma Wong is the same author that wrote Sword of Kaigen, and both are phenomenal works of art. Blood Over Brighthaven, our main character is a female, what do they call it? It's like she's not a magician, but yes, okay. Our main character is Sayona, and she is the first woman to be admitted into the High Magistracy, which is like the branch of government that uses magic to run the city, basically. And she, in her studies, uncovers some really troubling things about how the city is run. And she has this lab assistant that is helping her do all these things. And the discussions within the story are very well done. A little bit heavy-handed sometimes, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think of this book and these characters really fondly. I think that Emma Wong is phenomenal. The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. It could either go in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony or Brat. I think I'll put it in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. This is a like slow burn mystery surrounding 2 kids that go missing at the same summer camp, but at different points in time. They're both from the same family, and this family is the one that owns the summer camp, so it's very interesting. I think that it is a really like beautiful book, but it is very slow and very long. So you have to really be like settled in and ready to just like be there for a hot minute. I think that by the end of the book, I did like how it like wrapped up. It had a lot of good things going for it, but I did want it to go a little bit further in the like darker discussions and maybe a little bit more eerie in the atmosphere of being at a summer camp and being in the woods. I think that there were a couple missed opportunities within the storytelling. Even though I understand it, I guess, I just think that she could have pushed the envelope a little bit more. Feybound by Sarah Ella Reefy. I remember I gave this a strong 4. I'm gonna put it, man, either in Brad or Symphony again. Okay, listen, I'm gonna leave it in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony, because God of the Woods and Feybound were both like 3.5 to a 4, so they really could fluctuate. After thinking about God of the Woods, like I could see it going up into Brat, but same with Feybound, so whatever. I'm just gonna leave them both here, but know that they flux and flow. Feybound, I think, is a really beautiful fantasy story. I think that the writing was very fun, and the concept around our two sisters, one of them being banished away and from her civilization, and she finds the lost, like, was it Elven? The Fey Court, I think? No, yeah, the Elven. Oh, she's exiled from the Elven lands and they find the Fey Court. And I think that the world building when we're in the Fey Court is absolutely stunning. All of the characters and, again, the world building and the atmosphere that was elicited within the storytelling was definitely like 5-star read material. But how the relationships were handled didn't entirely make sense to me. It felt a little bit off, but the plot itself is definitely very intriguing and enough to make me want to continue the series for sure. Next we have The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I'm gonna put this one in Brat. I am very excited to continue this series. I compared it to The Will of the Many by James Islington and something else. Oh, that's right. I remember comparing this one to like The Will of the Many meets Sherlock Holmes is what it is like pitched as, which is so true. I love the dynamics between our two main characters. There's magic involved, like magic that is so interesting. Like the first dead body that gets discovered has a tree trunk growing from like within them, and that's how they die. And they find that there are many people that were killed this way, and then it becomes like a big like governmental thing. And it's very exciting. I love the writing, I love the story, and I love the character building. It could be in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now, honestly. Maybe I'll put it up there. What the heck? I'll put it up there. Why not? There are no rules. We have Serious Concerns by Wendy Cope. This is another chill guy not rating. This is a poetry collection. I really liked it. I like Wendy Cope a lot. I would recommend. We have Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. This is gonna be Brat. I like Sally Rooney. I think that she does a lot of good character work. Definitely more character driven than plot driven. And these characters have complicated relationships with one another and going through the grieving process of losing their father. I think Sally Rooney's a great writer. I didn't fall in love with these characters or connect with these characters as much as I did to normal people, but I still really liked Intermezzo. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. I feel like I've been talking about this book for so long because I read it, I think, in late January or early February. Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. It is in my top 10 of the year. The most fun I had while reading a book, I think, all year. A phenomenal like murder mystery, tongue-in-cheek, breaking the fourth wall. Like if you like murder mysteries, you absolutely, it is an essential read for you. It is so much fun. The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, I actually did not finish it. The book itself doesn't really seem to have a central plot. It is very much just like following these characters within this community, and whatever time I was reading it last year, it couldn't hold my attention for that reason. I don't think that this is a book that I will never revisit, but I just couldn't get through it. The thought of picking it up felt like a chore, and I didn't want to be doing that at the time. So I do think that it has merit, and I obviously think that it deserves all the hype that it gets, but just the lack of central plot, but still somehow having to find the will to care about the characters that were being introduced was very difficult for me. So I did DNF it this year. And then listen, The Family Game by Catherine Stedman. I am like, fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. This book is wild, and I loved it. I've thought about this book like every week since I read it. Surface level, it sounds like a book that like won't have anything super crazy or like super original, but like it really took some turns that I wasn't expecting. Our main character is marrying or getting engaged into this very wealthy family, and she's finding out that the family has like reaches everywhere. Like they can do anything, get anything done. And there's like a really weird Krampus scene, you know, it's during Christmas, and man, it was written so well. I was having a blast while reading it. And the final scene when they're all playing this like family game, it's just, I thought it was wild. I thought it was wild. I loved every second. I really did. Then we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. Personally do prefer my fantasy to have a little bit more action and gore and like excitement, but I am putting this in fantastic because I still appreciate this for what it is, and it's more of like a slow burn, very classic fantasy. I loved getting to know our main character as a young boy, and we're watching him grow up throughout this entire book series, but I am excited to continue this series. I think I gave this one like a 4.5 or something. Robin Hobb is great. I can tell that I'm going to fall in love with her writing even more as I continue, and I am just excited for that. Then we have the sequel to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, and this is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. And this one unfortunately was I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. A strong 3-star because this book was much shorter than the previous. I don't think that we got enough time to stew in the actual crime and trying to figure it out. Some of these scenes towards the like middle to end of the book were very much like suspension of disbelief, very crazy, very out of this world, but like not in a great way. It took me out of the story a little bit. Yeah, it just didn't work for me nearly as much as the first one, and I haven't picked up the third one for that reason. I'm scared of it. We Read Upon Six by Quan Berry is I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony again. I think that the story itself is very cute and very fun. I do love it for what it is. I just personally didn't love the very heavy-handedness of the callbacks to the time that this book takes place. Like when describing like the nostalgia of this time, is it like the 70s, 80s, is very specific, absolutely. But the callbacks were just way too much for me. Like I understand a little bit here and there, but there like actually were like paragraphs of just descriptions of, you know, like old cassettes and like old, I don't know, hairstyles. And it was just a little bit too goofy because this is another book that has more humorous writing and it doesn't really hit for me all the time, and it definitely didn't work here for me. But the central storyline of these young girls on this field hockey team like signing their soul away to like a devil character, you know, so that their team can play better, like it was very cute and I really did like it, but the overall like heavy-handedness of the callbacks and the atmosphere, it was just way too much in conjunction with like the humorous writing for me personally. Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne is still, again, in that middle, I just want to be part of your symphony. It is very similar to Legends and Latte by Travis Baldree, like very similar, but I did not connect to these characters as much as I wanted to. I think that it was a little bit too long and meandery. The central plot sort of got lost a couple times for me. I was having trouble concentrating on what I was supposed to care about. And I think that I will continue. I'll try her second book in this series because I think it has A Pirate's Life for Tea is what it's called, and that sounds really cute. And I would give it a shot because I think I have heard Rebecca Thorne didn't expect this book to get like as much popularity as it did, and I think that she took more time on the second one or something is of the like is what she said in an interview. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang is going to go in Brat because I think that it was a really well written story. I don't seem to have liked it as much as a lot of other people. I think that when it got weird, like within the plot, I really loved it and I felt like it was written really well. I think the overall discussion around our main character taking the identity of another woman, an Asian woman, and trying to basically put on yellow face and market her book and sell her book as someone that she isn't is, you know, it's crazy. And I think that R.F. Kuang did it in a very like entertaining way. I think it was good until that last little chunk of the book. The pacing was just a little bit up and down for me. Oh, Thursday Murder Club. I read that last year. So I'll put that also in Brat. I should have talked about that earlier. Again, just love those characters, love the story. I'm thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. I think when I first read it, I would have put it in I Want to Be Part of Your Symphony, but I have not really stopped thinking about it. I'm going to put it in Brat because I think Ian Reid is just a phenomenal horror writer. The way that he makes that build up, the atmosphere and the eeriness is so visceral, and it's always about things that are so commonplace and things that anyone could relate to. I think that he's phenomenal. I think that his writing is just next level. I want to read everything. He's definitely an auto-buy author for me. Okay, we're almost done. We have Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wang. This one is gonna go in Brat as well, because is Rouge here? Did I read Rouge in a different year? Oh, it was published in 2023, so that's probably when I read it. But Rouge by Mona Awad and Natural Beauty by Ling Wang are very similar in my opinion. I think that Mona Awad does like the body horror perfectly, and it's everything that I want. And I think that when Ling Wang did it in Natural Beauty, it was very good. I really did like it. And I compare the two books just because they both are playing on the beauty industry and what is deemed beautiful in society's eyes and what women or people in general will go through in order to be beautiful. I think the central plot of Natural Beauty lost me a couple times, but I was still interested the entire time as well. It was sort of a weird one because I read it after I read Rouge, so I felt like I kind of already explored the discussions and topics that Natural Beauty did. And I think that if I read Natural Beauty first, I would have loved it. Like, it probably would have been a 5 out of 5. But instead, it was like a 4 or 4.5, which is fine. But I do think that Mona Awad, the way that she writes her like almost out of this world horror is just, it works so well for me. So I was comparing a lot, unfortunately, but it is what it is. I still loved it, and I think it's a general consensus that it's a great book. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I'm gonna put it in Brat because it was great. It was a 4, 4.5-ish. I love Abby Jimenez. I think that her romance writing is exactly what I like. Just like Emily Henry, just like Tia Williams, like all of these romance writers that have a little bit like deeper topics explored as well. That's my ideal type of romance, and I think Just for the Summer definitely worked for me. I personally don't love books that involve nurses just because I'm a nurse and I just, for whatever reason, I don't want to read about it. But I still loved all of the like discussions that are explored within these main characters. They're both very much dealing with very heavy things and going through them together and separately. The callbacks to the other books in this romance series that starts with Part of Your World by the same author, when we got those callbacks towards the end of the book, phenomenal. Like, I love it. I love it so much. Part of Your World is one of my favorite books ever. So being able to have those callbacks were super, super fun. And this book does explore a lot of hard things. Like, our female main character has a horrible toxic relationship with her mother, very hard to read about. And then our male main character is having to take guardianship over all of his siblings. So his life is about to drastically change. And it's a really well written and explored book. I do feel that. How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. I think I'm gonna put it in, I'll put it in Brat because it could go down to I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony too, however. I think I'll put it there actually. It is still a really great romance book. I had a great time with it, except for the main problem, which you learn very early in the book, like within the first couple pages. How the main characters know each other is just so problematic for my mental scape. I just couldn't see how this story or this book would even take place because of how they know each other. And I won't say anything unless you could look it up too if you would rather. But I just had a hard time from the get-go understanding and being okay with these two main characters pursuing a romantic relationship. It just didn't really make sense for me. But that's just a personal thing. But it was a hang-up for me. Other than that, I did like the writing. I did like the story. But I couldn't completely fall in love with them because of that initial issue. Then we have Monstrilio. This is definitely, it's either Brat or Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. I think I'll put it in Fantastic. It is a horror book that is focused on grief, especially over parents losing a child. But however, they keep a part of their child and they grow it, they feed it, and they get this like creature back, and they sort of see it as a reincarnation in a way as their child. And it is not him, it's not, but in some ways it is. And it's really interesting. It's a really well done book. I can't believe that this is this author's debut novel because it is beautiful. It is definitely horrific. Wow. Yeah, no, I love this book. Yeah, I'm remembering more things as I'm thinking about it. Definitely deserves all the hype. For sure. Next we have Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I'm gonna say Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. This book gives voices to the women who are victims of a serial killer. The writing is absolutely stunning, and it was in my honorable mentions this year, for sure. It was beautiful. Monstrilio should have been in my honorable mentions. Like, this video is definitely showing you exactly how I feel about all of the books that I read this year, and I really appreciate it for that reason, because I did forget about some of them. Oh my god, The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. Absolutely fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. In my top 10. So classic fairy tale, so like Chronicles of Narnia-esque, but make it more modern and make it perfect. It's perfect. I love The Lost Story. I think it'll be in my favorite books ever. honestly. The Unmothers by Leslie J. Anderson, I'm also gonna put up here because heck, who cares? The Unmothers was the most surprising book that I read this year. Showed me that I love folktale horror. It's small town. It is so eerie and atmospheric. It is a little bit unsettling. It is marketed as a horror book, I believe, but it's more like mystery horror. We're very much in the mystery part because our main character is a reporter and she's reporting on this story that a human baby boy was born from a horse. And it is crazy. It is very, very interesting. I think it was really well written. I loved the conversations and things that it explored. And I just think of it so fondly. We have Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. I love the concept of the story. Our two main characters meet in an online gaming platform and they are older characters, which is fun in and of itself. Some of the chemistry was a little bit off, especially in the beginning. Some of the things that our main character, our female main character specifically, definitely didn't seem like things that she would do based on the previous character building. There were some like continuity issues like that for me within the story that were hard for me to ignore, but I still had a good time reading it. I was hoping for a little bit more like online game vibes, but we weren't in that part of the story too much, which I get. I just wanted it. The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd, I'm also gonna put in I Just Want to Be Part of Your Symphony. The idea surrounding the story, I think, was way more exciting than the actual follow through of it. I did have an okay time reading it, but some of the plot twists at the end I felt were a little bit confusing. I mean, but like the idea is definitely Brat. The execution is Symphony. That's how I feel. So I'm gonna leave it here because I remember at the end of this book feeling like I feel nothing for the main characters. And I normally don't have that issue. It's very easy for me to connect and root for, especially at least a main character, but I felt nothing for any of the characters, which was very difficult for me as I was reading this book. So, because that made it hard for me to care about the plot. But the idea, I mean, great. The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, obviously fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. It is the first book in the Stormlight Archive. It is a masterful feat of a fantasy book. Beautiful first book in a series. We're slowly introduced to all of the characters and the world, and everything going on is so intricate and so, again, masterful. It's a beautiful book. I cannot wait to continue. Okay, we only have a couple more. Dear God. Okay, we have The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. It's another book that I forgot to mention in my honorable mentions because it's definitely up there. I love this book. It is our main character who has like a magical attic, but she doesn't know it. And one day she's coming home from a night out with her friends and she comes into a husband that she doesn't remember having. All of the pictures around the house, everything is pointing to that this is actually her husband. She married him, but she doesn't remember doing so. But the next day he goes up in the attic, there's a little flash and a different husband comes down and everything around her again changes to like that guy now being her husband. And it keeps happening. We're following the situation. It's a little bit repetitive, but it's like, it works so well. It plays with the concept of like, if you have so many choices, you're never going to be like content or happy with what you have. And I love that. And I think that Holly Gramazio did a phenomenal job with this concept and story. The Echo of Old Books by Barbara Davis, I'm gonna put in Brat. Love the idea, love the concept. This is this rare bookseller and she finds these two rare old books that don't have authors, but they have like dedications that seem to be talking to one another. And they both tell the same story from different sides and they're both very conflicting. So she goes on this journey of trying to find who these books are from and she ends up finding it. There's a whole mystery. It is really good. The only thing that I didn't love about this was actually the romance. It felt a little bit forced and out of place, but the overall plot, loved it. Woodworm by Layla Martinez. It's gonna go in Brat. I think that it is a very good, like really short horror book. It's one that I wouldn't mind rereading at some point because I wonder if some things went over my head or if maybe it was a little bit like, I don't know, non-explorative. Like I wanted more. I wanted to like be in the house that we're living in a little bit more and understand like the horror elements even more than we were getting. But I understand that maybe this style of story was like short and punchy like for a reason, which is fine. But I personally, even though I loved it, I felt like it could have gone farther. For the last 3 books, we have been joined by Sammy, and he wants to let you know that The Spell Shop is in Fantastic. Give me 14 of them right now. It was my favorite cozy fantasy that I read all year. I think it was so much fun. I loved our main character, related to her so much, and I cannot wait for the prequel to come out later this year. I think the writing was great, and I loved this little like small town energy on this magical island. I just loved it. We have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This one I'm gonna put in Brat. It is a historical fiction following Shakespeare's families, particularly his wife, and I think that it was beautiful. I really do. It definitely made me cry. Absolutely. It could go into Fantastic, give me 14 of them, but there's something holding me back, so I'm just gonna leave it in Brat. Maybe it's just because I don't read a lot of historical fiction. I don't normally gravitate towards them. So the plot, definitely, you know, it's historical fiction. It's a little bit slow, a little bit meandery, which is perfectly fine. The writing is stunning, so I would recommend it for sure. The last book, friends, is Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. I am going to put this in Brat. There's another book by this author called Snowed In, which is like 6-star read. Absolutely. Love that book so much. This is set kind of in the same universe. And let me just say that the only reason that this book didn't get a 5-star is because the first like 25% of the book, we're following our main characters as they're trying to get home to, is it Ireland for Christmas? Scotland? Ireland? I think it's Ireland, wherever. They're trying to get across the pond, so to say, for Christmas to be with their families. And they make it this yearly thing to fly back together. This is like their 9th year or something doing it together. And we get flashbacks from all the previous years and therefore an evolution of their friendship and lack thereof sometimes. And the first, like I said, the first 25% of this book is following their like problems trying to get even on the plane and trying to get to, I think, Ireland. There is so many like canceled flights, a lot of travel anxiety, and it just put me back to our travels when we were going to Tokyo and Bali in this past year. It was just a lot. There was so much stress and anxiety. I just wanted to have a like silly, goofy, like holiday romance time, but it was just like, I actually like got sweaty reading it. It made me so anxious. But their banter, their relationship, I loved it. It was really fun, but we had to get through that like travel anxiety portion. And after that, it was fine. But okay. That's it. I need to go drink some water. This is my final bracket for the 104 books that I read in 2024. Good work, everyone. We did it. We got through it. I think that this all feels relatively correct. Like I said, there are a couple that could fluctuate between the higher or the lower one, but for the most part, I feel great about this. Thank you so much for being here and sticking through this whole video with me. If you are still here, then down below, leave me the black cat emoji since Sammy is now napping on my lap. And while you're down there, please do subscribe and like the video. I always appreciate your support. And of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.